Iran has responded to the killing of several top Iranian leaders, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and top military officials, with drones and missile strikes targeting Israel, as well as Gulf countries which are home to U.S. assets. Hapag-Lloyd had already paused all container vessels transit through the Strait of Hormuz amid the escalation. The company has now extended its measures by halting bookings for all cargo types for the Upper Gulf from Africa. The Upper Gulf region includes the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and the eastern province of Saudi Arabia. The decision will also apply to certain cargo shipments routed through Jebel Ali Port in Dubai. Away from that report, amid rumors of a power struggle between the two party colleagues, Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko said he would readily take his party out of the government and return to opposition if President Bassirou Faye breaks from its vision. According to Sonko, he and the president are in what he calls a soft power sharing situation and would manage their differences accordingly and also seek common ground to move forward together. He added that if there is a clearer break, they would either have a more difficult cohabitation, or the passive party, which Sonko leads and which holds a majority in parliament, would revert to being an opposition party. Tensions have been high in the West African country following violence at universities and long drawn-out talks with the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and Senegal battles to raise cash and negotiate a new lending program for the institution. The IMF froze a $1.8 billion program in 2024 after Sonko's government uncovered misreported debts by the previous administration that have been estimated to over $11 billion. Still talking politics, and now in Uganda, a Uganda youth-led pressure group within the ruling NRM party has criticized what it calls the growing trend of recurring opposition politicians into the party and rewarding them with government positions while long-serving cadres are left out. The outcry follows the recent recruitment of Yusuf Nsimbami from the Forum of Democratic Change, that's FDC, as well as declarations by party that more opposition members will be brought into the movement. Speaking in Kampala, the country's capital, the group described the practice as political fishing and warned that it risks demoralizing loyal members who have built and defended the movement for decades. Also, an NRN youth leader, Sylvia Kemirembi, said the party must not sacrifice loyalty for political convenience. He said the emerging practice of recruiting political rejected opposition figures and publicly parading them as converts only to position them for government appointments or strategic placement within state structures was unacceptable. And from Uganda, we'll move straight to Ghana, where the minority caucus in Ghana's parliament has described President John Dramani Mahama's second State of the Nation address as mere rhetoric. Minority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin told newsmen that the president's address failed to highlight challenges in key sectors of the economy, including cocoa, energy, and mining, and did not explain the reduction in the producer price of cocoa. According to him, the decline in world cocoa prices, as suggested by the majority, did not justify lowering the local producer price. He argued that one can achieve stability on paper for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, but that the real stability is when Ghanaians go to the market and experience lower prices of foodstuffs. Afenyo-Markin further alleged that the introduction of a 1 cedi energy sector reform levy and the increase in electricity tariff were an additional burden on citizens rather than the president's claim that current challenges in the energy and other sectors were inherited. Still in Ghana, I beg your pardon, from Ghana, we move straight to Liberia. The Liberian embassy in Accra says it is actively engaging Ghanaian authorities following the death of 26-year-old Liberian national Austin Tengbe. The incident has triggered outrage among Liberians both in Ghana and at home, with many demanding justice over what they believe was a mob killing. Tengbe reportedly died after an altercation on February the 27th in the Lashibi Sakumono area of Accra, a coastal suburb east of the Ghanaian capital. News of the incident spread rapidly across social media, sparking widespread anger and calls for swift accountability from Ghanaian authorities. In a statement, the Embassy of Liberia in Accra confirmed that it was formally notified of the incident and immediately initiated contacts with the Sokumono District Police Crime Unit and other relevant security agencies to obtain verified information about the circumstances surrounding Tengbe's death. The embassy said that according to information service, the matter was currently under active investigation. It added that Ghanaian authorities have already taken initial steps in response to the incident. And in Zimbabwe has begun releasing nearly 4,000 inmates under a presidential amnesty in a bid to ease overcrowding in the country's prison. A total of 4,305 prisoners, including 2,223 women, are set to be released under the clemency order. The cabinet announced it as it approved changes to the constitution as part of a plan to extend President Emerson Mnangagwa's term till 2030. The order grants a general amnesty to specific categories of convicted inmates as authorized by the president. Justice Minister Ziyambi explained that the 2026 amnesty is targeted and merit-based, focusing on vulnerable groups and those who have demonstrated significant progress in their rehabilitation. He said the action reflects a commitment to restorative justice and national compassion, adding that it did not include prisoners convicted of serious crimes. Among those freed was 23-year-old Tendai Chisika, who had been serving a 6-month sentence for theft and was only 2 months away from completing it. Away from that report, the United Nations says dozens of civilians have been killed in renewed violence in northern South Sudan over the past 48 hours. The United Nations mission in South Sudan, I beg your pardon, known as UNMISS, said it was alarmed by surging clashes in Abionom County in the Renweng administrative area near the border with Sudan. According to the mission, unidentified armed youths attacked the county headquarters, wounding no fewer than 23 persons. In a statement by the UN mission, they said dozens of civilians and several local officials were reportedly killed in the fighting, while over 1,000 persons have sought temporary shelter at the UN peacekeeping base for protection. The head of UN mission, Anita Kiki Gebo, urged all parties to cease hostilities immediately and engage in constructive dialogue to address their grievances. Tensions have intensified in recent weeks as a fragile power-sharing deal between President Salva Kiir and First Vice President Riek Machar has begun to unravel. Still in South Sudan, Doctors Without Borders, that's the MSF, has reported that 26 humanitarian workers have gone missing following clashes in South Sudan's Jonglei state. The MSF said that among the 291 MSF staff in Lanken, and Prairie Town created emergency support in areas where people have sought refuge. According to him, this violence has taken an unbearable toll not only on healthcare services, but on the very people who kept them running. He added that medical workers must never be targets. You're still watching the African News right here on Voice of the People Television. We'll go straight to the analysis segment of the news. And joining us now to make sense of these stories that made it to the bulletin in the studio with us is Darlington Agumo, a lawyer and also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. A very good afternoon to you, Barrister Darlington, and thank you for joining the conversation.
David, and how are you?
I'm fine, very well, thank you. How are you doing as well?
I'm okay.
All right then. Joined us also virtually, all the way from Uganda, is Barrister Edward Okwaro Matekene. Barrister Edward is a human rights activist and also a legal practitioner in Uganda. A very good afternoon to you, Barrister Edward, and thank you for joining the conversation this afternoon.
Very good afternoon to you, David. Thank you.
All right then. Also joined us virtually, all the way from Ghana, is Patrick Ablakwa. Mr. Patrick is a financial expert and also a public and political affairs analyst and commentator. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Patrick. All right then. Well, I understand Mr. Patrick hasn't joined the conversation, and he would definitely be joining the conversation in the course of talking. Well, let me start off this conversation from Uganda. Barrister Edward, interestingly, Doctors Without Borders in South Sudan, I beg your pardon, South Sudan has clearly stated that 26 humanitarian workers have gone missing following clashes in around the Jogli state of South Sudan. Now, this clearly is stating that among the 291 Doctors Without Borders, I'm talking about the MSF now, taken in Lankin and the Perry towns, 26 of these humanitarian workers have been missing. Of course, this again is as a result of the attacks that has been consistent in the South Sudanese state. What do you make of the fact that humanitarian workers have practically been affected in this act that has been ongoing for the past 3 years or more?
Thank you, David. Though I'm experiencing some kind of network connection, but I will try to feed it myself to the discussion. What is exactly happening on this so-called South Sudan issue, affecting even the doctors? In fact, it should be a concern not only in South Sudan. It should be a concern for all the territories within South Sudan, because doctors who are trying to actually put their life on line of duty, even at the time when the civil war is actually affecting the nation, and you get that they are frustrated. Then I believe the government must be so much on touch with these people, because their security should be intact, their security should be provided, because you cannot leave your family and front yourself to actually on a call of duty, and you are totally affected, you are not given a proper security. And I'm also blaming the people who are still supporting these so-called rebels, so-called the people who are still fighting within South Sudan, who have failed to come up with a conflict resolution, a sort of agreement on their side. It is unfortunate that such a country, which is still growing, which is still young, in the continent of Africa, are going through this kind of civil wars. Those are things which need to be addressed, not within even South Sudan. These are issues which need to be addressed within African partners, more especially the AU, which has totally covered itself to the bedroom.
All right, I'm still going to stay with you before I bring it back to the studio. Questions are being raised about the fact that 26 of these humanitarian workers are declared missing. Could the disappearance of these 26 individuals mark the collapse of South Sudan's humanitarian lifeline? Because this, again, is a statement to the UN clearly stating that their officials are not safe in giving aid to the people who are, again, suffering from this political brouhaha found in South Sudan.
Yes, it's going to affect actually the support which the ordinary people are getting, because I don't think whether there is anybody who can be accepting to stay on line of duty when such issues are not addressed in a proper manner. So you get that the ordinary person is going to be actually cut even by the donors themselves, because this is something which is very serious. To actually the person who's even supporting you, where you don't provide security and you are not giving a clear strategy on how this is supposed to be addressed, then it's going to be unfortunate to South Africa.
All right, then let me bring this conversation to the studio here. As it stands, is there the possibility that, like some are saying, the government clearly is complicit in all of these attacks? And should these humanitarian workers be the very sacrifice to protecting the fragile political fracas in South Sudan as it stands now?
It behoves on the UN to tell the warring parties that their personnel must be safe, and that if anything happens to them, they should be held accountable. I mean, it will be part of the ICC investigation at the end of the day. They must account for those 26, both parties. They cannot just disappear. It's not possible. Both parties must account for those 26 because they are not part of the conflict. They came there to help.
Exactly.
So why must they die trying to help? To help your people who you are. Yeah? It doesn't happen. The UN must be very strong on this particular issue so that other warring parties should beware that UN officials are not involved in the conflict and nothing should happen to them. That is what I think here.
So as it stands now, are you saying that the person of the president, Riek Machar, and of course, I beg your pardon, first Vice President Riek Machar and Salva Kiir should be held accountable for not just not protecting her citizens, but humanitarian workers who are also trying to even help the citizens who are suffering in the midst of this power struggle between these two actors?
It may not be coming from the government itself. It may be from these rebel forces, the ROSF. That is why the UN should be very insistent on knowing what happened to these 26. Yes, they should send out a warning that nothing. I want to assume that maybe somebody kidnapped them, they kept them somewhere, and not that they are dead. If they are, then ICC must look into this matter. All the so-called champions of this fight must be brought in. They must be brought in for crime against humanity, because that is what it amounts to. Look, granted that social workers, especially at the UN level, they know what they are going into, they know what they signed. But deliberate act of aggression is out of it. Yes, maybe in a collateral damage, something may happen, but not when it was deliberately done. You deliberately kill a social worker. You deliberately kidnap a social worker. You deliberately bring a social worker into harm's way. That is no longer collateral.
Now,
deliberate.
Barrister, let's talk about the accountability of the presidency and, of course, the first vice president, Riek Machar, because as it stands, 250,000 persons are left without health care in the Lankin and Pierre area, worsening what's already a very deep humanitarian crisis. Shouldn't the leadership of the country be held accountable for such negligence on the path of security?
If the social workers are not willing to go there for help because of the deteriorating security problem.
Yes, that look like the negative impact that this is going to have.
Will you blame them? All they needed is to secure the place. That is all the government need to do, because I know the rebels, they want to commit as much damage as they can to put the government to shame. It is not left for the government to say no. They have returned to the capital, Khartoum. That means they are having the upper hand. So why are these people still posing a problem to the government? The government should be very decisive on this matter before more harm are done. The government should be more decisive.
All right, then. Well, again, this is one conversation that would be ongoing in South Sudan because of the power struggle between the president, Riek Machar, Salva Kiir, and the first vice president, Riek Machar. But let me take this conversation back to Uganda, and I'm still going to stay in Sudan. The United Nations says dozens of civilians have been killed in a renewed violence in the northern South Sudan over the past 48 hours. Well, interestingly as it sounds, the alarm is in clashes in Abernum County in the Ruweng administrative area of the country. From your position, looking at the fact that the UN is also saying, as it stands, about 23 persons have been injured coming from their records. What do you think would be the position of the presidency, noting how many persons have been killed in this consistent fight for power in South Sudan? I mean, it's the youngest democracy in Africa.
You see, David, normally what we know in the rule of law, once you're a president, you actually carry all the blame in that particular country. So in this case,
the commander in chief.
Yes, he's a commander in chief. So so there's no way a government can actually run away from this kind of conflicts, this kind of atrocities in the civilians. So I believe the UN itself should also act. You know, what I've seen in South Sudan is their internal and external kind of support, which is actually supporting both sides. And these are things which need to be addressed, because I don't think we need to support somebody to kill a human being. If you know better that this person's activities of that country, why would you go and support? These people are acting in a way of in a way that there are other countries, there are other supporters, there are external supporters which are actually supporting their activity, which should be actually be addressed first by other partners. You come to the UN, it's good probably UN to denounce some of this kind of a support from these partners who are actually supporting the rebels, which are actually now causing this kind of. But the government sits squarely on this issue, which needs now the government to come up with the kind of policies, directions on how to deal with this kind of crisis at home.
I'm still going to stay with you, Barrister Edward. The UN also has reported that in the last 48 hours, over 1,000 persons have sought temporary shelter at the UN peacekeeping base for protection. Looking at these figures, 1,048 hours as a result of the consistent hostile attack by both forces of the RSF and the South Sudanese army. From your position, is this a surge that might increase between now and the coming days, Or do you think the government and the body language of the government, which again oppositions are saying this is not going to change, do you think the government is going to do anything visible, particularly on the part of protecting her citizens and not making them run for shelter the way they are presently?
I think I believe the government should work strictly as quick as possible to see that they can actually handle the situation. They can come up the situation. They can actually see that this kind of war, armor, civil kind of fight should actually be carved. So I believe the government has all the responsibility in this at this moment to see how to resolve the matter and also probably discuss the matter with partners who actually probably react as quick as possible to see how this situation can be brought to book to the end. That is what my view would be.
All right, then. Let me bring it back to the studio, Mr. Darlington, as it stands, this conversation about civilians going as quick as possible to trying to get shelter within the UN base, about 1,000 of them. What does that imply of the security situation in a country where power is being shared by two gentlemen who, again, are trying to still broker peace, and they are still in that peace conversation?
You mean
Riek Machar and Salva Kiir?
They are, look, I have told the government of Sudan, they should
South Sudan.
Sorry?
South Sudan.
Yeah, the government of South Sudan, yes. They should take charge of this particular issue by telling off the external factors in this matter. They are the ones who fueling this conflict. Because if they should now confront the external enemy, the internal enemy will just die off. Somebody somewhere is behind the RSF. And that is the truth. So what is the government doing against these persons? What is the government doing against this external enemy? Except they confront this external enemy, they will continue to fund this internal enemy.
But then again, some have argued that this level of violence is localized and does not threaten the national stability of the nation. Is this feasible, owing to the fact that in less than 48 hours, 1,000 of the civilians in that particular state have found their way to the UN shelter for safety? Where are we putting the part of safety of lives when they're saying the national stability of the country is not being threatened as a result of these kind of attacks?
They cannot say so. It just, look, don't look at what they are saying. Look at what is happening. What they are saying is not synonymous with what is on ground. There is a conflict. Is that not so?
Yes.
Good. Confront that conflict. Every other thing is secondary. Confront it. And start playing with words here. Confront the conflict, and then you would have achieved the success for your people. As long as this conflict persists, the people of South Sudan will never have peace.
Now, but
their safety will not be guaranteed.
Before I jump up to another story, let's talk about the impact of these kind of attacks. The renewed violence disrupts, of course, is going to be disrupting oil production within those northern states where these attacks have been happening. And of course, undermining government's revenue. Against the backdrop of these attacks, how much of an economic impact do you think this will be having on Africa's youngest democracy?
Of course, the economy is going to deteriorate further. There's no two ways about it. The war will be taking a toll on the economy. They need all the money to grow. This is a young democracy that needs to grow. Infrastructure. All the things they need to put in place. Now the money is going into war. The money is going into taking care of the military. The money is going into buying weapons to confront a common enemy here. And so there's no way the economy will be the same, whether from the oil or from external factors. This is money they need for positive development in South Sudan. Now the money will be going into fighting war. You need to take care of the military, the guys fighting the war. You need to buy arms and ammunition. And so the economy will be worse for it at the end of the day.
And the both parties are also going to have, would this in any way disrupt the peace deal between the both warring parties?
Of course. Because I don't even know why I should go for a peace deal with a rebel group. It's just that the government of South Sudan is very weak. Seriously, they are very weak. If they are very strong, and very determined, the rebels will be begging for mercy.
All right, then. Let's jump to another conversation before we truly run out of time. Zimbabwe has begun releasing nearly 4,000 inmates under a presidential amnesty in a bid to ease overcrowding in the country's prison. Well, a total of 4,305 prisoners, including 223 women, are set to be released under the clemency order. Well, Mr. Dawson, let's have this conversation. The clemency order is something that, let me use the word we're a bit used to, because Nigeria also wanted to have such. But looking at the fact that some are saying that this is more like a plan on the part of President Emerson Mnangagwa's ploy to still stay in office till 2030. You would also recall that the conversation about his stay in power as tweaking the constitution is still in the front burner of the parliament in Zimbabwe. What do you make of this, basically?
Whenever a government wants to win election or stay in power, they always do one thing or the other to placate the people.
Including using the clemency law?
Yes, to buy the vote or the heart of the people. It happens most times. I think Joe Biden did it in America. Yes, he did it. And then even canceled some of the loan funds, student loan funds. So, they must find one thing or the other. But in that of Zimbabwe, it is a welcome development because most of them shouldn't have been in prison in the first place. Maybe the opponent put them there, just to punish them for unnecessarily. So if this man has decided to release them, but there should be no condition. It should not be conditional. It is something that you ought to do that you are doing. You should not attach it to any other thing. Because if you do, the next person that may take over from you may return them back. Yes, if it was not properly done and you discover that you did it for your political gain, it may backfire. That's why whenever you are doing such a thing, make sure that it is well positioned under the law.
All right, then. Let me take this conversation to Uganda, and of course, we'll wrap up this conversation from here. Barrister Edward, well, same conversation about clemency law as being carried out by the president. Some are saying that this is the presidency trying to just play a very trickish move to wanting to quell down the tension about his staying in power till 2030. Just opposing that situation with, of course, the story coming from your country where the youth-led pressure group within the ruling NRM party is criticizing what it calls the growing trend of recruiting opposition politicians into the party and rewarding them with government position. The two stories together in 1 minute. Help us make sense of it.
Okay, before I even go to that, David, there's this issue of South Sudan. Recently, the Kenyan government was actually declared being issuing passports to the RSF rebels. It should be South Sudan should take action by actually communicating officially to Kenyan government so that this thing should stop. Getting back to your question on we are talking of Zimbabwe, where the crowding, but I don't think whether that would be the reason the government should actually release the prisoners. Facilities can always be expanded on the other hand. If indeed they are crowded, then it means that the growth of the country should also be in question. It should be a political kind of a question, which probably that is the reason why. Coming to Uganda, you get that every government, Museveni is still buying what we call legitimacy. So the only way is for him to actually give a credit, please the opposition to see that they get these jobs. And obviously, these people are both. These are not probably even the real people we will be talking about. Museveni should be talking at this moment, see ways of creating a harmony with the opposition leader whom they have chased away from the country. So all that is just political. We are not yet sure of such claims. But the reality is Museveni should actually reach to the opposition leader and they discuss on the table issues concerning Uganda.
All right, then. Thank you so very much, Barrister Edward Okwaro Matakinye, human rights activist and, of course, legal practitioner in Uganda. Thank you so very much for joining the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also with us in the studio here, Mr. Darlington Agumo, lawyer and, of course, public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Thank you so very much for being here. We'll take a very short break right now. When we return, Somali army allies seize key Al-Shabaab strongholds. These and more when we return after this break. Please stay with us. Back at still the African news right here on Voice of the People television. Now to more stories. Armed conflict. The Somali Defense Ministry says the country's army, backed by international allies, including Ugandan troops serving with the African Union mission, ALSOM, has captured key Al-Shabaab held areas in southern Somalia. The forces secured Darussalam and Mubarak in Lower Shabelle region, areas that had served as strategic strongholds and safe haven for Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab terrorists. The ministry said Operation Rolling Thunder, which was announced on Sunday and conducted as part of the broader Operation Bada, directly targeted terrorist-run illegal cults, hideouts for senior members, and sites used to plan and launch attacks on civilians. According to the ministry, the operation dealt a significant blow to Al-Shabaab, destroying key command posts and weapons cache while fully securing deliberated areas and continuing operations to hunt down remaining terrorists. Earlier, the ministry vowed that Operation Rolling Thunder would continue until the terrorist group is fully eradicated as a threat to peace, progress, and state building in Somalia. And from that story, we move straight to talking African business. The South African rand held steady in early Tuesday trade, even as investors sought safe haven assets amid the escalating United States and Israeli strikes on Iran and fears that the conflict would broaden into a longer regional war and add to market uncertainties. Treasury specialist at Mkulu Treasury, Adam Phillips, said at this stage, the currency is sitting on the sidelines as attention is on the euro and Japanese yen because they import a great deal of oil and gas. The dollar firmed 0.2% against a basket of currencies, with gold, a major South African export, extending gains. Like other risk-sensitive currencies, the rand often takes cues from global drivers such as the U.S. policies in addition to domestic economic data. South Africa's benchmark 2035 government bond was also flat early deals with the yield at 8.16%. Phillips said there are worries that the conflict could drive up inflation, and economists are now expecting fewer interest rate cuts over the next 6 months. And to wrap up the African news, we go straight talking sports. The South African Football Association, SAFA, in conjunction with Adidas, have reviewed the new 2027 home jersey for both Bafana Bafana and Bayana Bayana, said to capture the spirit of South African football. SAFA Chief Executive Officer Lindia Moyepao said the Federal is very excited for what this launch will do to motivate the country's junior teams to continue performing in this jersey as they aspire as one day by senior team members. The jersey is also said to have been developed to meet the demands of top-level football using engineered stretch fabrics with 3D body mapping to improve ventilation, enhance breathability, and help keep players dry in high intensity and high temperature conditions. The 2027 home jersey retains the yellow base with green trim, a color palette synonymous with national pride, drawing inspiration from the unforgettable 2010 jersey. The updated design pays tribute to South Africa's 12th official language, a reflection of the national diversity, unity, and shared love for football. And with that sports story, we've come to the end of African News right here on Voice of the People Television. Do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. On YouTube, we are at Voice of the People TV, and on all other social media platforms, we are at VOP TV Live. Thank you so very much for being a part of this broadcast. I am David Edwin. You have a good afternoon.
VOP TV. Now, you have more than a voice. Are you ready for the extraordinary?
This is Health Check, your weekly guide to better living, smarter choices, and trusted answers. From everyday wellness to urgent health issues, we've got you covered. Health Check, only on Voice of the People Television, where your health has a voice.
Are you ready for the extraordinary? Something big is happening on your screen. Introducing VOP TV. Now streaming on SLTV channel 264. From breaking news to captivating conversations, news analysis, giving you all sides to the story. We bring in-depth discussions on the issues that matter, from politics to sports, entertainment, and lifestyle. VOP TV on SLTV channel 264. Join us as we redefine what television means to you. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV. Now, you have more than a voice.
Behind every broken desk lies a broken promise. Education shapes the nation, but who is asking the right question?